My name is Jennifer, and for 35 years, I believed in the fairy tale. I'm a fourth-grade teacher, and my world was built on simple, solid things. Spelling tests, crayon drawings, and a love I thought was unshakable. My husband David was my anchor. We were celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and life felt like a beautiful, completed puzzle. The restaurant was his idea, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who knew not to interrupt. David reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "To a decade with the most incredible woman I know," he said, his smile the same one that had made me fall for him in college. Then he slid a small velvet box toward me. Inside was a diamond necklace that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across the table. It must have cost a fortune. "David, this is too much," I gasped, my heart swelling with a mixture of love and slight worry over the expense. "Nothing is too much for you, Jen," he said, his voice soft and sure. "You're my everything." I believed him. I wore the necklace home, feeling its weight against my skin, a tangible symbol of our perfect life. We had a lovely house, 2 great kids sleeping at my mother's for the night, and a love that had only grown stronger. Or so I thought. The phone call came 2 days later. I was grading science projects on the living room floor, the diamond necklace still on, a secret smile on my face every time I caught my reflection. A woman's voice, tight with controlled emotion, asked, "Is this Jennifer?" "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Lisa. I'm David's wife." I actually laughed. It was so absurd. "I think you have the wrong David. My husband's name is David Miller." "I know his name is David Miller," she said, and the pain in her voice was so raw it cut through my amusement. "He drives a dark blue SUV. He has a mole on his left shoulder. He's an investment manager. He's my husband. We live in Oakwood. We have 2 children." The room began to spin. The details she listed were intimate, correct. A cold dread, so profound it felt like a physical blow, started to creep up my spine. "This isn't funny. Who is this really? It's not a joke," she whispered. And I could hear she was crying. "I found your number in his suit pocket. I found the receipt for a diamond necklace from Tiffany's. Our anniversary isn't for another 6 months." I dropped the phone. The world I knew, the perfect puzzle of my life, had just been smashed to pieces. I confronted David the moment he walked in, holding the phone in my shaking hand. His face, usually so open and familiar, went through a rapid series of emotions: shock, fear, and finally, a devastating resignation. He didn't deny it. He just sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "Jen, I can explain." The explanation was a nightmare. There was another wife. Another family. In a city just 2 hours away. A 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl who called him daddy. He'd been living a double life for 8 years. Almost our entire marriage. The business trips, the late nights at the office, it was all a lie. The diamond necklace wasn't a symbol of his love. It was a tool to keep me quiet and happy, to maintain the perfect facade while he lived another life. I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, was a complete stranger. I spent the night in the guest room, crying until I had no tears left. The next day, after he left for work, or wherever he really went, I wandered through our house like a ghost. It felt like a museum of my own naivete. Every photo, every piece of furniture felt tainted. I ended up in the basement, a place I rarely went. It was David's domain, where he kept his tools and old files. In a blind rage of grief and betrayal, I started pulling boxes down from the shelves. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. More photos, more lies. That's when I noticed it. A section of the wooden paneling behind the workbench looked different. The seam was almost invisible, but when I pushed on it, there was a faint click. A small hidden door, no bigger than a cereal box, swung inward. My heart hammered in my chest. I reached inside and pulled out a small, locked metal box. It was heavy. Using one of David's own hammers, I smashed the cheap lock. Inside, there were no more photos of another family. There were passports. 3 of them. 2 had David's picture with different names. 1 had my picture, with a name I didn't recognize. And underneath them, bound with rubber bands, were thick stacks of $100 bills, and what looked like official financial documents from a bank I'd never heard of. The affair, the second family. It was horrifying, but it was something I could, in my shattered state, almost understand. But this was something else entirely. This was a level of deception I couldn't comprehend. The real shock wasn't that my husband had another wife. The real shock, the one that truly froze the blood in my veins, was what I found hidden in our basement. The cold metal of the box felt like ice against my trembling hands. I sat on the dusty basement floor, surrounded by the detritus of the life I thought we had, old Christmas decorations, a box of baby clothes I couldn't bear to part with, and now, this secret that made my stomach churn. Upstairs, the house was silent. David was at work, or maybe he was in Oakwood with Lisa and their children. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I had to know everything. I couldn't live in this half-shattered world anymore. I needed to see all the broken pieces, no matter how much they cut me. I emptied the box onto the concrete floor. The 2 fake passports for David and the one with my picture, under a name Claire Peterson, were the first shock. Why did he have a fake passport for me? Was he planning to flee the country? And with me? Or without me? My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Beneath the passports were the bundles of cash. I counted it with numb fingers. $20,000. Just sitting in our basement. I thought of the mortgage we worried about, the used car we'd just bought for me, the way we'd budgeted for our anniversary dinner. It was all a performance. He had money. A lot of it. Then came the documents. I spread them out, my eyes struggling to focus on the dense financial jargon. They were account statements from a bank in the Cayman Islands. The numbers made no sense. There were transfers, deposits, balances that climbed into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This wasn't just hidden savings. This was wealth. Wealth he had never shared with me. Wealth he had actively hidden from me. Tucked between the financial statements was a small, worn photo album. My breath hitched. I didn't want to see this, but I had to. I opened it. There they were. David, looking older and somehow more relaxed, with his arm around a pretty blonde woman, Lisa, and 2 children, a boy with David's smile and a little girl with her mother's eyes. There were pictures of Christmases, birthdays, beach vacations, a whole life, documented and cherished, running parallel to mine. The date on a birthday photo was from 7 years ago. Proof. He had been living this double life for nearly 8 years, since just after our first child was born. I felt the air leave my lungs. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated. He hadn't slipped up once. He had maintained 2 separate worlds, 2 families, for almost a decade. The love, the anniversaries, the bedtime stories he'd told our children. It was all a lie. He was a ghost in both of his homes, never fully present, always dividing his time, his money, his heart. But as I sat there, drowning in the evidence of his infidelity, my eyes kept drifting back to the financial documents. The affair was a personal hell, a destruction of my heart. But the money that felt like a different kind of danger. The fake passports, the offshore accounts, the hidden cash. This wasn't just about hiding a second family. This was about hiding something else entirely. I picked up one of the Cayman Islands statements again, looking more closely at the transaction codes and the names of the depositing entities. They were shell companies, names that meant nothing. But then I saw a pattern: large round number deposits, followed by smaller scattered withdrawals. It looked less like savings and more like laundering. Was he cleaning money for someone? Was it his own? The documents revealed something even more terrifying than his affair. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. And the fake passport with my picture on it meant I was somehow, unknowingly, involved. The walls of my basement felt like they were closing in. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was in danger. The word criminal echoed in the silent basement, changing the very air I breathed. The pain of betrayal was suddenly eclipsed by a cold, sharp fear. I wasn't just dealing with a broken heart. I was sitting on a potential crime scene. My hands, which had been trembling with grief, now shook with a new, primal terror. I scrambled to gather everything, stuffing the passports, the cash, and the damning financial statements back into the metal box. I couldn't leave it here. What if David came back and realized I knew? The man I had shared a bed with for 10 years was a stranger capable of monumental deception. What else was he capable of? I hid the box in the one place I was sure he never looked, inside a vacuum-sealed bag at the bottom of the chest where I kept our winter blankets. My mind was racing, a frantic checklist. I needed copies. I needed to get this information somewhere safe. I spent the next 2 hours at the local library, my heart pounding every time the door opened. Using a scanner and a public computer, I digitized every page of every document, every photo in the album. I saved them to 2 separate flash drives. I mailed one to my sister, who lived across the country, with a brief, vague note saying it was important and to keep it safe. The other flash drive I hid in my classroom at school, taped to the back of a filing cabinet. The original box remained in the blanket chest, a ticking time bomb in my own home. When David returned that evening, he was carrying takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. The smell of it, which usually brought me comfort, now made me nauseous. He was playing the part of the remorseful husband, his eyes full of a practiced sorrow. "Jen, we need to talk about this," he began, setting the food on the table. "I know I've hurt you unimaginably. But Lisa and the kids, it's complicated. I never meant for you to find out." I watched him, really watched him. I saw the subtle calculation in his eyes, the way he was carefully measuring his words, trying to manage the situation. He wasn't apologizing for the crime. He was apologizing for getting caught in the affair. He had no idea I had unearthed the deeper layer of his deceit. "I found something in the basement today," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I didn't elaborate. I just watched his face. A flicker of something, not guilt, but alarm, passed through his eyes so quickly I would have missed it if I wasn't looking for it. He recovered instantly, his expression shifting to one of confused concern. In the basement? What did you find, honey? Some old mouse droppings? I told you I'd take care of that. He was good. He was so good. He didn't ask what it was. He deflected, trying to make me feel silly. He was probing to see how much I knew, without revealing that there was anything to know. Just some old papers. I lied, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was looking for our marriage certificate. I wanted to remember what it felt like to trust you. The line sounded melodramatic, but it worked. His shoulders relaxed slightly. He thought my pain was still confined to the emotional, to the affair. He believed he was still in control. That night, lying beside him in our bed, the gulf between us felt infinite. I was lying next to a man who led a double life, who possibly engaged in criminal activities, and who had a fake passport with my name on it. The why of that last part terrified me the most. Was it a plan that had fallen through? Or was it a plan for the future? I had thought the discovery of his second family was the worst thing that could happen to me. But as I lay there, listening to his steady breathing, I knew I was wrong. The affair was a personal tragedy. The contents of that metal box were a threat. And I had no idea who or what I was truly married to. My first real conversation with Lisa was over a crackling phone line, two women bound by the same lie. Her voice was raw, stripped bare. His business trips, she said, a bitter laugh escaping her. The conferences in Chicago, the client meetings in Miami. He'd always bring back a tacky souvenir. I thought he was just bad at gifts. I got the same souvenirs, I whispered, the mundane horror of it sinking in. He'd bought in bulk, proof of his divided life packed into his suitcase. We met in person the next day, in a neutral, busy park halfway between our two cities. Seeing her was like looking into a distorted mirror. She was blonde where I was brunette, softer where I was more angular, but the same shock and fear was etched on both our faces. We were two sides of the same ruined coin. I showed her the documents from the box. Her face, already pale, went ghostly white. "I've seen some of these company names," she stammered, pointing a trembling finger at one of the Cayman Islands statements. He told me it was a venture capital fund he was managing for a few high-profile clients. He said it was too sensitive to discuss. Together, hunched over a picnic table, we pieced together a terrifying puzzle. David wasn't just hiding money, he was moving it. Illegally. The business trips were likely when he met with associates, moving cash, and funneling it through shell companies before it landed in the offshore accounts. He was using both our households as cover, his stable family man image in two separate cities, providing the perfect camouflage for his illicit activities. The mortgage payments on my house, the private school tuition for her kids, it was all part of the facade, a way to legitimize the flow of dirty money. "He's not just a cheater, Lisa," I said, my voice low. "He's a criminal, and we're living in the middle of his operation." The realization that we were both in danger landed with a heavy, silent thud between us. We knew too much. If David discovered we had joined forces and uncovered his financial scheme, we wouldn't just be inconvenient exes. We would be liabilities. And the man we were dealing with had already proven himself to be a master of deception, with resources we couldn't begin to fathom. David's behavior at home became increasingly suspicious. He started working from home more, his office door closed, his voice a low murmur during phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. He became hypervigilant, questioning me about my day with an intensity that felt more like an interrogation than concern. "Did you see anyone unusual? Did you talk to anyone new?" he'd ask, his eyes searching my face for a lie. He was getting paranoid. He was checking his traps. One evening, he helped me carry groceries from my car, his hands deftly slipping under the wheel wells and along the bumper in a way that was anything but casual. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I called Lisa immediately. "Check your car," I told her, my voice tight. "Look for anything that doesn't belong." She called me back 20 minutes later, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Jennifer. I found it. A little black magnetic box, stuck to the inside of the rear bumper. I went back out to my own car, my heart hammering. I didn't find one. I found two. One on the bumper, just like Lisa's, and another, smaller one, hidden deep inside the frame of the driver's seat, nearly invisible. That's when we found the tracking devices in our cars. He wasn't just watching us, he was hunting, and we were the prey. The discovery of the tracking devices changed everything. The fear was no longer a vague, looming shadow. It had sharp teeth and was biting down hard. We were being hunted by the man we had called our husband. In that moment, any lingering jealousy or resentment between Lisa and me evaporated, replaced by a raw, survivalist bond. We were no longer David's wives. We were fellow prisoners plotting a breakout. Our unlikely alliance became a war council, conducted over encrypted messaging apps, and in the back corner of a loud, anonymous chain restaurant far from either of our homes. We were two halves of a whole, finally united against the man who had fractured us. Lisa had access to his current laptop when he was at my house. I had the historical evidence from the basement box. Together, we started building a case. It was painstaking, terrifying work. Lisa would take photos of documents on his computer screen with her phone. I cataloged every transaction from the Cayman Islands accounts, cross-referencing them with his supposed business trips. We created a shared digital folder, a mosaic of his deceit, financial records, photos of the fake passports, logs of his movements from the tracking devices we had left active but now knew about. We were gathering the rope, and David was diligently weaving it for us. But evidence wasn't enough. We needed an escape plan. We opened separate, secret bank accounts, each depositing small amounts of cash we could hide from his scrutiny. We made lists of essentials for ourselves and the children, storing them at a friend's house. We discussed safe places to go, people we could trust. We were preparing for a war we knew would break out the second we made our move. The control he had exerted over our lives for years was about to be shattered, and we had no idea how violent the explosion would be. The confrontation couldn't happen in either of our homes. They were his territory, wired and monitored. We chose a public park during the day, with people around. We felt it was our only shield. We told him we needed to talk, that it was about the children's future. He arrived, handsome and confident in his suit, expecting to manage two emotional women. He did not expect to see us sitting side by side on a park bench, a united front. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice a mixture of impatience and condescension. "It's about everything, David," I said, my voice calm despite the earthquake inside me. We know about the money laundering. The shell companies, the Cayman Islands." Lisa picked up, her voice steel. "We know the business trips were a lie. We know you used our homes, our lives, to hide your crimes." For a split second, sheer panic flashed in his eyes. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating mask. He actually laughed. It wasn't a laugh of amusement, but of contempt. A dry, chilling sound that made my blood run cold. "You too?" he sneered, looking between us. "You think you can prove anything? You're a school teacher," he said, pointing at me. "And you," he turned to Lisa, "you can't even balance a checkbook. The documents you think you have are meaningless, without context. My associates are powerful people. You go to the police with this fairy tale, and you'll be the ones facing charges. Harassment. Theft. I'll make sure you never see your children again." The threat hung in the air, ugly and absolute. He was no longer our husband. He was a cornered predator, showing his teeth. He thought his intimidation would work. He thought his lies and his power were still enough to control us. He laughed and told us we'd never prove anything. But he didn't know about the recording. The phone in my pocket, set to record the entire conversation, had captured every word. his confession by mockery, his threats, his utter lack of remorse. We had his voice, and for a man who lived in the shadows, his own voice, admitting to his crimes and threatening his victims, was the one piece of evidence that could drag him into the light. The silence after his threat was heavier than any sound. The birds in the park, the distant laughter of children, it all faded into a dull hum. David stood there, his chest puffed out, believing he had won. He saw two scared women, and in a way, he was right. We were terrified, but he mistook our fear for surrender. He didn't see the resolve that had been forged in the fire of his betrayal. I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, stopping the recording with a tap that sounded deafeningly loud in the tense quiet. His eyes followed the movement, and for the first time, a crack appeared in his arrogant mask. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice losing its smooth confidence. "That was our insurance policy, David," Lisa said, her voice surprisingly steady. She stood up, facing him squarely. "You just confessed to financial crimes and threatened to have our children taken away. On record." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing. That's illegal." "So is money laundering," I fired back, standing beside Lisa. "The united front was our greatest strength. So is bigamy. So are the fake passports. We're way past worrying about what's legal, David. We're in survival mode." He took a step toward us, his hands clenching into fists. The predator was cornered, and the urge to lash out was visible in every tense line of his body. "You delete that right now. You have no idea what you're playing with. This isn't just about me. The people I work with, they won't let this stand." His words were meant to terrify us further, but they only solidified our purpose. He wasn't just a lone wolf. He was part of a pack, and that meant the danger was even greater than we'd imagined. "We're not deleting anything," I said, holding my phone tightly. "Here's what's going to happen. You are going to leave. You will not come to our homes. You will not contact us directly. Any communication will be through our lawyers, who we will be hiring tomorrow. You will not attempt to move or hide any assets. If you do, if you so much as send a threatening text, copies of this recording and every single document we have will be sent to the FBI, the IRS, and 3 major news networks." We had rehearsed this. We delivered the terms with a cold finality that left no room for negotiation. We were no longer pleading, we were dictating. He stared at us, his jaw working, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The man who had controlled every aspect of our lives for a decade was utterly powerless. He had been outmaneuvered by the very people he considered beneath his notice. "This isn't over," he spat, the words venomous. "It is for you," Lisa whispered, her voice thick with a mixture of grief and triumph. He turned on his heel and walked away, his shoulders stiff with rage. We watched him go, 2 women standing together in the afternoon sun, the weight of his tyranny slowly lifting from our shoulders. We had faced the dragon and hadn't been burned. We had his voice, his confession, captured in the digital memory of a phone. It was a tiny, fragile weapon, but in that moment it felt more powerful than all his lies, and all his stolen money. The battle wasn't won, but we had just won the most important skirmish. We had taken back our power. Walking into the FBI field office felt like stepping off a cliff. Lisa and I held hands, a gesture of solidarity that was as much for our own courage as it was a show of unity. The folder we carried contained our shattered lives, neatly organized into evidence. The fake passports, the financial records, the photos, and the digital recording. The agent who met with us, a serious woman named Ramos, listened with growing intensity as we laid out the story. When she heard the recording, her professional demeanor cracked for just a second. "He said that? On tape?" She clarified, and we nodded. That was the key that unlocked everything. Within hours, a flurry of activity began. Warrants were issued for David's financial records, his office, our homes. The legal machine we had set in motion was now grinding forward, and it was terrifying. David's arrest played out on the evening news. They filmed him being led out of his office in handcuffs, his suit jacket draped over his wrists. The media circus exploded. Local philanthropist in double-life scandal. Bigamist banker busted. Our pictures, and Lisa's, were splashed across the screen. We became a national spectacle, a shocking story of betrayal and crime. It was humiliating, invasive, and yet there was a grim sense of justice in seeing the perfect facade of his life publicly shattered. The immediate fight was for financial survival. The government froze all of David's assets, including the accounts tied to our homes. Suddenly, mortgage payments and bills were in jeopardy. Lisa and I had to hire a lawyer together to petition the court to release funds for our basic living expenses and legal fees. We sat in a different lawyer's office, this time on the same side of the table, fighting not against each other, but to save the roofs over our children's heads from the collapse of David's empire. Through it all, we supported each other in a way no one else could. When the media scrutiny felt overwhelming, we would talk for hours. When the legal paperwork became a mountain of confusion, we deciphered it together. We were each other's alibi for the truth in a world that found our story unbelievable. The shared trauma created a bond that was deeper than friendship. It was a sisterhood, forged in betrayal. The most beautiful thing to emerge from the wreckage was our children. We decided they should meet. My son Jake and Lisa's son Noah were close in age. We brought them together at a playground, our hearts in our throats. There was a moment of shy confusion, and then Jake, looking at Noah, said, "You look like my dad." Noah nodded. "You do too." That was it. They ran off to play on the slides. Two brothers who had just found each other. Their bond instant and uncomplicated. Watching them, Lisa and I cried. But for the first time, they were tears of hope. The preliminary hearings were a blur of legal procedures. David, out on bail, sat with his high-priced attorney, a smug look on his face. He thought he could still talk his way out of it. But then came the day of the key evidentiary hearing. The prosecution was presenting its core evidence to the judge. Agent Ramos was on the stand, detailing the money trail. David's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. Quote, "Agent Ramos," he began, his tone dismissive. "This entire case seems to hinge on the testimony of two jilted women, doesn't it? Women who are angry, who feel betrayed, and who have colluded to create a fantastical story to bring down my client." He was trying to paint us as hysterical liars, but Agent Ramos didn't flinch. "Not exactly, counselor," she said calmly. "The evidence is forensic and overwhelming. But there is one piece of testimony that corroborates the entire timeline." She turned to the judge. "The prosecution calls its next witness, Martin Croft." A side door opened, and a nervous, middle-aged man walked in. David, for the first time, looked genuinely shocked. I didn't recognize him. Lisa gasped softly next to me. "That's his old business partner," she whispered. "They had a falling out years ago." Croft took the stand and was sworn in. The prosecutor approached. "Mr. Croft, can you tell the court about your former business relationship with the defendant?" Croft cleared his throat, avoiding David's furious gaze. "We ran a consulting firm together. About 8 years ago, David came to me with a proposal. A way to make real money. He said he had clients who needed their assets, discreetly managed. I refused. It was clearly illegal. I dissolved our partnership shortly after." The prosecutor then presented a document. "And is this the email the defendant sent you after you refused?" Croft looked at it and nodded. "Yes. He told me I was a fool. He said he had the perfect cover now. He said, and I remember the words exactly, 'No one will ever suspect a boring family man. I'm going to be the ghost in 2 houses. The courtroom erupted. The courtroom revelation that changed everything about our case wasn't just our evidence. It was the testimony of his former partner, confirming the timeline and the cold, calculated intent behind everything David had done. He hadn't stumbled into this double life. He had built it, deliberately, as a shield for his crimes. The ghost had just been seen by everyone." The verdict came after 6 long days of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. Money laundering, wire fraud, bigamy, passport fraud. The list was long. When the judge read the sentence, 25 years in a federal prison, I felt no triumph, only a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. The monster was caged. The war was over. David, in his expensive suit, looked smaller somehow, as the marshals led him away. He didn't look back at us. In the aftermath, Lisa and I faced the monumental task of starting over. The frozen assets were slowly unfrozen under court supervision, the legitimate portions divided between us. It was enough to give us each a fresh start. We didn't move in together. That would have been too much, a constant reminder of the shared trauma. But we bought houses in the same town, a few streets apart. Our children, who had become fast friends, could now ride their bikes between 2 homes that were both safe. We created a new kind of family from the ruins. It was messy and unconventional, born from a man's betrayal but built on our mutual resilience. We celebrated birthdays together, shared holidays, and navigated parent-teacher conferences as a united front. Jake and Noah, brothers in every way that mattered, shared a room on weekends. Lisa's daughter, Sophie, followed my daughter, Emma, around like a tiny, adoring shadow. We weren't just co-parents. We were a clan, bound not by blood or marriage, but by the fire we had walked through together. Learning to trust again was the hardest part. The first time a nice, divorced father from school asked me out for coffee, I panicked. I ran a background check, Lisa had taught me how to do. I analyzed his smile for deceit. It took months, and therapy, to understand that David's pathology was his alone, not a universal male trait. Lisa and I would laugh, sometimes hysterically, about our shared paranoia. We were learning, slowly, that trust wasn't about guaranteeing someone would never hurt you. It was about knowing you could survive it if they did. In the quiet moments, I realized the most important thing I had found wasn't a new home or financial security. It was a strength I never knew I had. The timid, trusting schoolteacher was gone. In her place was a woman who had stared down a predator, outsmarted a criminal, and built a beautiful, if unconventional, life from the ashes. I was stronger, wiser, and fiercely protective of the peace I had carved out for myself and my children. Life settled into a new, peaceful normal. The media lost interest. The court cases became a closed chapter. We were healing. Then, the letter came. It was forwarded from my old address, the prison's return address stark against the white envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was from David. His handwriting was sloppier, angrier. He didn't ask about the children. He didn't apologize. The letter was full of bitterness and blame. But at the end, scrawled almost as an afterthought, was a single, shocking paragraph. You think you won? You think you took everything? There's one thing you and that idiot Lisa never found. A safety deposit box. Key number 447. First National, downtown, under the name Claire Peterson. Consider it my real anniversary gift to you. Let's see how your sisterhood survives what's inside. I sat down heavily, the paper fluttering from my hand. Claire Peterson. The name on my fake passport. He had kept one last secret, one final card to play from behind bars. He was trying to plant a seed of doubt, to poison the well of our hard-won peace from his prison cell. The last letter David sent from prison contained one final secret that would change our lives forever. I looked out the window at Lisa's house, where our children were playing in the yard. I knew what I had to do. I picked up the phone. I wouldn't let his poison divide us. Whatever was in that box, we would face it together, just like we had faced everything else.